Well, hello, hello, hello. I am Alexis Nelson. I'm your coach. Yes, I am your coach with Evolve and Thrive Life Coaching Insights. For those who don't know me, I'm Alexis Nelson and I am a life coach. And we have many topics that we have been discussing on Evolve and Thrive. And I am so excited about doing so because this series we're speaking on is relationships and how to enhance them. And so we are covering a lot of different topics. And the series started last Saturday. And, we talked about vulnerability and the importance of vulnerability in relationships. But this week, we're going to talk about boundaries. Good stuff. So, for those who want individual coaching and want to know more about what Coaching Toward Purpose does, you can go to our website at alexisnelson.us and you can find out more about some of the packages, the individual packages, and the group packages that Coaching Toward Purpose offers. So, before I get started, life learners, I'm going to tell you to like and share because sharing is caring. And guess what? I want you to live life on purpose. Why? Because you're worth it. So let's just go right into today's topic. And I've already told you what it was. We are talking about boundaries. Boundaries. And just a brief overview of kind of why I want to talk about boundaries because it is so important because this is what sometimes hinder relationships. And so we have to know how to navigate through boundaries. So we're going to talk about that today. So, boundaries, let me put it up for you. Boundaries are guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways of others, how they can behave towards them, and how they will respond to someone. Okay, let me repeat that. Boundaries are guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways for others to behave toward them and how they will respond when, all right, and this is important, when someone crosses those boundaries. See, this is crucial for maintaining healthy relationships because it helps individuals with the following topics that I'm going to speak about today. And again, for those who are just joining, I want to make this plain and simple again. Why we're talking about boundaries and why they are so important. What they are, again, they're guidelines, rules, or limits that a person creates to identify reasonable, safe, and permissible ways of others to behave towards them and how they will respond when someone crosses those boundaries. This is crucial for maintaining healthy relationships because, and I'm going to list the things it helps with, okay? All right. And now I want you all to be picking up what I'm putting down because this is some good stuff here. And we need this because boundaries is something that many times we struggle with, not just in our personal lives, but even in our organizations. Or even small groups that you may be a part of. This is something that challenges relationships. And so I really want to talk about this with you. And I'm going to give you five, maybe five things that help with this, okay? And so here we grow. I always say here we grow. All right. So first, what boundaries does is it establishes self-respect. Boundaries communicate to others how individuals expect to be treated, which reinforces their self-worth and dignity. All right, this is important because it establishes self respect. This is what boundaries do, everyone. This is what boundaries do, life learners out there who's listening. I want you to write these tips down because this is going to help you when it comes to boundaries and it's going to help you communicate boundaries in such a way where it will enhance the relationship relationships that may have been kind of torn or strained because there was no boundary set in place. So this is important. So number one, again, is to establish self-respect. And I'm just going to go through all of them right quick and then I'll go into them. So number one, I want you to write down, it establishes self-respect, right? It helps you maintain personal space and autonomy. It prevents resentment and burnout. It promotes mutual respect and it enhances communication. So, those are the 5 tips I want you to write down. And we already talked about it establishing self respect, right? Because that's what boundaries do. But it also helps maintain personal space and autonomy, which is so important, right? Boundaries enable individuals to maintain control over their personal time, their personal space, time, emotions, and decisions. Let me put that on repeat. For all those who just stepped away and they didn't hear what I just said, this is what boundaries do. It helps you maintain personal space and autonomy. Boundaries enable individuals to maintain control over their personal space, time, emotions, and decisions. And this sometimes is a challenge when it comes to communicating the importance of boundaries, right? You want to be able to have that autonomy in your space. You want to have, I always say, I create the environment that I want. So let me give you an example of how that looks, right? So if you're coming to my home and I don't allow smoking because this is my environment, I make sure that I make that clear and plain. And this is what boundaries do. Because if you don't set boundaries, people will do whatever they want to do, how they live their life or what they indulge in. And that may not be your story. Even in the workplace, if you don't want people coming on your desk, taking things without permission, you need to create that boundary, right? You need to maintain that personal space and autonomy. So, in order for individuals to respect that, and in order for you as an individual to maintain control over your personal space, time, emotions, and decisions, this is where you articulate that. And this is why boundaries is so important. So that's tip 2. Maintain your personal space and autonomy. Tip 3, right? Are you all following me still? And if you have comments as I'm going through these tips, please make sure you put them in the comment section. If you have something to ask that you want me to go into further detail about, make sure you leave that in the comment section because I definitely want to answer your questions, okay? So we did number 1, establish self-respect, right? Number 2, we said maintain personal space and autonomy. And number 3, it prevents resentment and burnout. This is what boundaries does. It prevents resentment and burnout. Clear boundaries prevent individuals from feeling overwhelmed or taken advantage of, reducing resentment and burnout in relationships. So let's talk about this a little bit. All right, life learners. And again, this is a benefit of setting boundaries. Sometimes when you don't allow people to understand what your capacity is, it can cause burnout and resentment. And so now we're frustrated. So now when we're trying to have healthy relationships, there's no healthy in it because now I should have told you how I was feeling, but I didn't. I didn't communicate it to you. And so you did whatever it was that you thought, not trying to cause me to be frustrated, but you didn't know. So this is what boundaries help you with. If you're complaining or you're frustrated or you're overwhelmed, let's go back to ask that question. Did I set a boundary? Did I set the boundary that was conducive for me to grow? How is it that I am overwhelmed? I'm frustrated. I'm ready to just walk out the job place because it is way too much, as I like to say, ABM, a bit much. Well, did you set the boundary? Did you communicate the boundary? And this is again why it's important for us to really focus on how to establish boundaries. This is going to promote growth in relationships. Okay. So, number 4, What does boundaries do? It promotes mutual respect. Respecting each other's boundaries foster mutual respect and understanding within the relationship. So I can respect if you say, you know what? Ah, every time you eat, you smack. And it really, really bothers me. So if you could, and I am not trying to be rude, but it does something to my ears when you smack your food. Is it possible that you could either like go somewhere else, or is it possible that I can know and I can move, but this is something that it's just too much. Or, you know, I really don't like it when I have a plate on my table with food and you reach over and say, "Oh, can I get some?" before asking. Ooh, that is a no-no. I don't like it. I would appreciate it if you would ask first. And the person like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know. I ain't know." You know what? That's pretty cool because you know what? I just would like for you, the other person can say, "Well, you know what? I can respect that." But can you also respect the fact that I can't read your mind? So if it's something that I'm doing that's bothering you, can you just communicate it to me? Because I'm really trying to be on the good side. I'm not trying to cause you any frustration. And now you see how that promotes mutual respect. Now we're respecting each other's boundaries and we're understanding each other. And this is healthy for relationships. Sometimes we assume that people know, or we assume that people know how we feel, or they assume they know what we don't like because they've been around us forever. And I'm in, but never assume. Mm-mm. No assumptions, honey. Tell them like a TI is, so everything could be well in your relationship. All right. So we talked about promote mutual respect, but it also enhances communication, right? Setting and respecting boundaries encourages open and honest communication, leading to healthier, more fulfilling relationships overall. So, if we can communicate how we feel to others, it really helps the relationship. Because, as I just said, we're not mind readers. If you want people to understand what it is that you are trying to say, just say it. Don't assume that they know. Boundaries help you do that. Boundaries help you set um, this stage where you can have a platform to execute what it is that you need, how you feel, what your limitations are. This helps. And again, last week we talked about vulnerability, but this week, it's nice to be vulnerable, but you still need boundaries. So this is why we're talking about boundaries today. Okay. So if you are just joining us, we're pretty much to the end of this session, but we were talking about boundaries. And the five things that I talked about was establishing self-respect, because this is important when it comes to relationships. I also talked about maintaining personal space and autonomy. Number three, I talked about preventing resentment and burnout. And I also talked about promoting mutual respect. And the last tip I said was enhanced communication. And those five things is what really improves relationships. Because if you establish boundaries, this will help a whole lot. I'm trying to tell you, it really is the foundation of developing healthy relationships, right? Sometimes people are afraid to say what they don't like, or because they fear rejection. But let me tell you something. Boundaries is a necessity. People do know them, and this is important. So make sure that when you're communicating and you're setting those boundaries, that you are really specific, to the point, and no fear, because boundaries is necessary. Without boundaries, people do whatever. And like I said, I like to create my environment. Life learners, create your environment. You don't have to be in an environment that's not conducive for growth. You don't have to accept what everybody else wants you to do if it's not good for you. So create those boundaries. It is freedom, honey. Listen to me. It is freedom. Create those boundaries because, again, it's a necessity. Now, if you have any further questions or you want to go a little deeper and you want some individual time, make sure, again, you reach out to me at alexisnelson.us and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And we can schedule some time, just one on one, so we can talk about some different areas to help you in your relationship. All right. And again, I thank you for joining Evolve and Thrive Life Coaching Insights. I'm telling you, life learners, every time you watch this show, there is going to be a nugget that's going to help you growth up. Because why? I want all my life learners to live life on purpose because you are worth it. You are indeed worth it. And again, thank you for joining me on Evolve and Thrive. I look forward to seeing you next week because we will continue our topics on relationships because this is what it's all about. And there's so many different topics that we will be talking about. But this topic is very, very, very important because it's going to help you thrive on your jobs. It's going to help you thrive in your relationships. And it's just going to help you thrive overall. So, life learners, I want to see you back here next Saturday. Again, make sure you like and share. And again, thank you. You all have a good one. See you next Saturday.